One of my least favorite things to talk about is the horse race. Okay, we're in 2014. Well, we're not even in 2014 yet. I'm kind of ahead of myself.
You're doing it now.
I know, I'm ahead of myself, right? We haven't even started the midterm elections, and people are already talking about 2016, which drives me absolutely fucking insane. Can we focus on the policy issues that actually make a difference in America right now? But a lot of people have been talking about Senator Elizabeth Warren and her possible run for president in 2016. Now, I find that fascinating because she's someone that I definitely support. I didn't want to speculate about her running. However, Third Way, which is a Democratic think tank, which is very apologetic to corporations and Wall Street, wrote a very, very nasty blog about her on the Wall Street Journal. So I'm very curious to see what the panel thinks about it, but before we get to the topic, I want you to watch this video very quickly.
With fundraising and speaking engagements from coast to coast, Hillary Clinton continues to dominate the 2016 presidential speculation.
Thank you.
Apologetic liberal who could stir things up.
You don't get anything you don't fight for. But if you fight, you got a chance to win.
First-term Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren.
I don't want to go to the United States Senate to be there for women some of the time. I want to go to the United States Senate to be there for women all of the time.
She's another fast-rising star who could make history and might threaten a Clinton Democratic coronation if they both run for the White House 3 years from now.
All right, so there's some speculation for you there. I love Elizabeth Warren. I've been very supportive of her. She has been very, very tough on Wall Street. If anyone were to pass regulation of Wall Street or the big banks, it would be Elizabeth Warren. And just to give you a very small example of a proposal that she made just last year, she wanted to lower the interest rate for federal student loans to 0.75%. The reason why she wanted to do that was because whenever the banks borrow money from the United States government and from the taxpayers, that's their interest rate, 0.75%. Do you want to know what the interest rate is on federal student loans at this moment? 3.86%. Okay, so Elizabeth Warren is actually looking out for the little guy, which I absolutely love. But now the question is, would Elizabeth Warren be a better president than Hillary Clinton would be? Now, Third Way, as I mentioned earlier on, wrote this op-ed in the Wall Street Journal where they were just totally criticizing her because she has the audacity to try to expand government programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. These are programs that are very popular in the United States. If you poll Americans, they say that they love it, and they're willing to pay higher payroll taxes just to expand these government programs, right? At the same time, Hillary Clinton's a little different, okay? So let's bring in the panelists, even though I've already said quite a bit about this topic. Kelly, what do you think about Elizabeth Warren? Are you on board? And don't be afraid to piss me off, because if you are not on board, I'm totally open to it. Go ahead.
She's a total rock star.
Thank you.
I love her. I love her courage. I love her ability to speak truth to power. I love the fact that she got elected by speaking truth to power, of course in a very progressive state.
Yes.
But she's there and she's rabble-rousing and she's bringing up important points of view and issues that it seems that in the last, I don't know, 20 years or so, it feels like, in some way, have just kind of gone to the side. We've all just, been coming more and more towards the middle as Democrats and as people on the left in Washington. And she's someone who's, kind of pulling the rubber band back and saying, no, these are important issues and someone needs to speak up for the little guy. So I love her.
Right, absolutely. And with the ravaging, the ransacking of the country that's going on Wall Street, this should be the entire Democratic Party that's speaking like she is, but it's not. She is this small glimmer of light. And let's also just say that the CNN story right there is complete and utter bullshit. Like, she has already said she supports Hillary Clinton for the presidential nomination, so they're just trying to trump up some ridiculous story that's not actually there. Now, it'd be great if all the Democrats were like Warren, but they're not, because when you don't have Wall Street's back, you don't usually make it a senator either.
Yeah, that's true. But doesn't that point out a real injustice and a real problem in politics today? Avi, why don't you jump in? I mean, what do you think about the fact that Democrats, the people that keep saying, when they campaign, they say that they're going to regulate Wall Street, and they're going to do something to break up the big banks and make them smaller, right? So they're not too big to fail. Why is it that they campaign that way, and then as soon as they get elected into office, they renege on their promises?
Well, there are a number of reasons, and basically I agree with Kelly and Lee and you that Elizabeth Warren is bringing up some very important issues that we should probably be discussing more as a country, and she may be successful in drawing more attention to them and in reframing them. And if she were to decide to run for the presidency, she'd certainly cause quite a bit of trouble for Hillary.
She definitely would. How much would Hillary hate that, by the way? First time around, this unknown senator comes in and he like snatches up the election, or the primary and then the election. Yeah. And then second time around, Elizabeth Warren, if she were to run, which as Lee mentioned perfectly, she's probably not going to, but it would be so hilarious to see that happen to her second time around.
Yeah. However, I do think that she would not be a viable candidate at the national level.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, there are two reasons, or several actually. As you mentioned, there is a money issue, but people sometimes get overly cynical about politics, and they think that just being able to outspend your rival guarantees a victory. And as we have seen before, that's not at all true. There are actually important forces in public opinion.
80%, most money wins 80% of the time in the Senate, 93% of the time in the House. It is almost always. I mean, that is a lot of the time, all right? So the person with the most money is running away with these elections.
Which, and Avi is right about the fact that Elizabeth Warren probably would not get the backing of corporations, and as a result, she wouldn't raise as much money as someone like Hillary Clinton would. Right. So, go ahead.
But also, there's forces in public opinion. New York Times columnist Tom Edsall wrote today or yesterday that when times get tough in America specifically, support for redistributive policies actually goes down. And this is something we see in countries around the world. When people are under economic pressure, they tend to polarize, but in the direction of their predisposition. So
why is that?
Well, the reason is because when people feel like they don't have as much personal control over their lives, they're more likely to look for a strong political authority to kind of fix the problem. But it's really their personality differences that determine whether that authority would be on the left or the right. So after the fallout from the 2008 financial crisis, we saw our political spectrum expand on both ends with the Occupy and the Tea Party movements. I think it may be that the US political spectrum is a bit skewed to the right.
Definitely.
So,
definitely.
So when people do polarize, the support for redistribution goes down. And this ties into one of the three measurable clusters of personality traits that I talk about in Our Political Nature, which has to do with tolerance toward inequality. And it has actually very little at all to do with your income bracket.
But even calling it redistribution, I mean, I'm wondering about these polls you're talking about, because calling it redistribution, how about just a living wage? You know, that's, yeah, redistribution sounds bad. A living wage sounds quite good. So it depends on the way you talk about these things. These are words created in right-wing think tanks.
Yeah, that's a good point. The way you frame the questions, that plays a huge role in the way that respondents react. You know, whenever people are getting polled on the Affordable Care Act, once they hear Affordable Care Act, they'll say that they're in favor of it. Once they hear Obamacare, the same people will say that they're against it, even though it is the same policy.
Kimmel did a great thing where he showed the two people saying, "Oh, I like the Affordable Care Act. I hate Obamacare."
Yeah.
Well, and the language of this I think is so important, because one of the things I noticed from the clip was they used unapologetic to describe her. Do they use unapologetic when they talk about people on the right in the Tea Party who are making a stance for themselves? I'm just really curious about how the media uses that word, because it's a really slippery little word there. It's like there's a defiance to the left or something that's not happening on the right.
Remember, Hillary Clinton was described as shrill when she was running in the primaries. And even though I was supportive of Obama in the primaries, I still thought that that was not an appropriate word to describe her. So yeah, you do see a lot of that, you know, you see those slants in the media, and I think it does play a role in, you know, public perception. But I guess we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, I don't think Elizabeth Warren is going to run, but regardless of who runs, the one topic, and I think we can all agree on this, is we got to get the money out of politics, because if we don't, then the money will always influence our political system, the policies that get proposed, and the policies that get passed.